Go ahead and commence with the salutations. If uh, Teresa, you can keep an eye on any guests who might be joining us and get it going here. First, before we begin at all, we would like to welcome each and every one of you in the spirit of studying ourselves, uh, setting our nervous systems, and the transformational change that we intend to offer. And we truly do welcome you to this space. And we take it as a sacred space. So, welcome here. We would like to welcome all of the healers, the visionaries, the believers, questioners. Welcome to activists, organizers, street medics, community workers, facilitators, mediators, community workers, right? Philosophers, dreamers, dancers, poets, singers, and musicians. Um, Welcome to artists and muses. Welcome to the fighters and to um, the lovers. Welcome to the doers, makers, observers, the storytellers, and the scribes. Welcome new friends. Welcome dear friends. Uh, the documentarians, revolutionaries, evolutionaries. We welcome you here. We welcome your body uh, and your soul, your body, especially, because that's a lot of the work that we're going to be doing through this time. Hopefully, it will reach your soul, your head, your heart, and especially your gut instincts. We welcome folks who are disabled, either bodily or societally. Um, and we welcome those who are all along the spectrum of that, wherever it may be. At some point, we will all be there together. And we welcome you however your body shows up today. We welcome all of your emotions, the rage and fury that you may feel in these days, confusion and despair, grief and heartbreak. But we also welcome hope and joy, resistance, chaos, empathy, curiosity, inspiration, ecstasy, and all of the immense and expansive love of which each of our hearts are capable. We welcome the divine feminine and the divine masculine in each one of us, in all of their fluid fabulousness, and all of the ways in which we express them and they express us. And may we continue to have and fight for the multiversal freedom to celebrate as we may choose. Welcome every generation from the boomers to Generation X, millennials, Gen Z, and Gen Alpha, and to all of those who have come before and are not yet to be assigned a random, very marketable generational title. You too are welcome in this space. Welcome uh, those of us who have lost young children. It is an impossible task to lose and to bury our young. And it is one that more and more of us are facing every day. We see you, we acknowledge your path, and we welcome the young who cannot be with us, whether lost to the violence of an inadequate healthcare system, uh, the violence of a social contract that has been failed to be lived up to, or the violence of the white supremacist, capitalist, patriarchal uh, regime under which we find ourselves in this year, 2005, today being August 18th, 2025, uh, today being August 18th. Wouldn't that be cool? Not cool that it were happening then, but just all right then, time. We welcome our elders. Hi there. Here in the room with us, and those older than me, of course, those younger than me, of course, but the elders in the room, in the Zoom rooms who show up, thank you for bringing your life experience and your wisdom, all of the ways that you are still learning, creating, and teaching and sharing. Um, they are essential to community building, and you are deeply welcome here. We also welcome the elders, mentors, and teachers in our lives. Um, this is, as much as can be, going to be a shared space, space where we are bringing our voices in. This is one of those moments. Um, we are going to assume that, along with those who are visible, that those who are joining us asynchronously, there is a cacophony that would happen should we all come on microphones. So, with our microphones off, I would like to give everybody just a moment to think to uh, the elders, the mentors, the teachers in your lives, somebody who has made a dramatically positive impact in your life, if such a person does exist, who has helped you to find yourself where you are today, on this path and the path on which you still walk. Uh, give you a moment to say the name. I welcome to this space Charlie Papazian. He is now known as a microbrew baron in Colorado, but was an elementary school teacher when I was of that age. We welcome the ancestors, those in each one of our lives, those of the lands on which we stand right now, and those of our ancestral homelands. We know that in each of our ancestral lines, there have been people who have resisted the need to dominate and to terrorize. And so, for those spirits who have helped us in the resistance, um, we welcome them here. If you know their names, this will be another opportunity to speak their names now. Know that if you do not recall their names, um, your name is not lost to them. And I'll give you a moment for that as well. I call my tia, Carla Madrid, who was in the Peace Corps when it was still thought to be that, naively, but really did try. We welcome the earth, the oceans, the rivers, the streams, the mountains, the plains, the deserts, the jungles, the forests, the winds, the rain, thunder, and lightning, all of the journeys and paths and crossroads upon which they take us and through what they take us through them. We welcome the spark of inspiration that brought each one of you here to connect through this miracle of technology, make it possible for us to be face to face here and across the entire globe whether that be in the moment or whether that be asynchronously. Um, there's no part of your humanity, there's no part of this moment that is a mistake. And we truly, truly welcome you here to this 30-day uh, resetting our nervous system challenge. And with that, I just want to make absolutely sure for the guests who are here live that there is no part of your humanity that was somehow uh, disinvited or left uninvited to this space. So just an indication of a thumbs up or a head nod, and we can keep moving forward. And Andrea, I will take the silence as an affirmation, and we'll keep it going. All right. Well, welcome, and thank you for being here. My name is Carlos Karim Wyndham. They, them are my pronouns. I am one of the co founders of Strategy and Solidarity, and I am here with my business partner and the person with whom I have been building and teaching and trying to create community for the past decade or so. Uh, will introduce themselves now.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Teresa. Pronouns are she and her. They and them work for me as well. One of the other co-founders of Strategy and Solidarity. And then, it's worth noting, Carlos and I also have our own consulting practices on the side, which is Subduction Consulting is my company. Carlos's is El Porvenir Services. And I like to, though there was nothing intentional about the way that we each named our businesses and the ways that we work together, I think it's interesting that subduction is this geological process where the Earth's plates are crashing into each other, and one is like descending down into the magma, and the other one's rising up, and it creates a lot of volcanoes and earthquakes, and is responsible for most of the topography of the landscape around us. And so it's that constant process of evolution. And while it can be destabilizing and painful at times, it also is creating the new things that are to come. And El Porvenir in Spanish is the future or what's to come, and really thinking about what is that future that we are all trying to build together. And so that way that Carlos really brings in that visionary spirit. I try to hold down some of the process of how we survive and get there. And it does speak to the way that we've worked together, and starting Strategy and Solidarity is an opportunity to bring in even more of our collaborators in a non-hierarchical alternative model outside of our standard nonprofits or for-profit exploitative structure. That's a little bit about us and what we're doing here. I'm glad to have you all in the room with us.
All righty. Well, here we go. We're gonna do the thing now. I am going to also say in the overview that two things are going to be happening. When you see me, and you will if you're here with us and watching, looking off to the side, what's happening is actually I've been asked in real true life if my glasses are prescription or for show. And I will tell you that if I don't have most of the words over here on this big giant screen, this is not going to be as productive a whole thing that we're going to do together. So I'm going to look over here. I'm not ignoring you. And I don't, so we're just to be clear, it's a little embarrassing because I feel like I look like I'm doing a live stream. We're doing this though to create balance within our nervous systems, right? We don't want to suggest that that means that we have to bury our heads. We don't want to suggest that somehow that means we ignore, right, what is happening in the disparity in the current global despair that is preeminent in our thoughts, if not for anything, the fact that we all have in our pockets at all times a robot that is going to keep letting us know that things are not fantastic, uh, regardless of what you're trying to watch, right? Whether you're doing the doom scrolling or just trying to get away. And that fact, the fact that we see more clearly what is happening makes it uh, more challenging to remain balanced, right? And taking more time to step into community, even through these electronic spaces. And in these spaces, to use them to create connectivity and to create restoration and to create a space where we are able to find the balance that we seek as we are trying to build toward the future, right? And being able to do that in community, and we have come to believe that that really does take balance, and so that's what we are here trying to do, to expand our individual and collective capacity to navigate the challenges of this time with integrity and intention, right? And to share some very simple and effective tools and skills and that from a community resiliency model, CREM, combined with our lived experience and years of supporting clients through this time, through conflict, and mostly through healing, right? Because really, that's what this piece of it is about, like being able to heal oneself or create at least a space for healing within what can be a challenging time. And with that, we have some promises and requests. Teresa.
Yeah, we just ask that anything anyone shares here in the room, whether you're here with us live or watching the recording, that we keep that like confidential within our space. And the same for things that people may share online in the discussion feed. Like we'll keep that confidential to our community space and not share anyone's words or stories without their explicit permission beyond this space. Our other request is just that you take good care of yourselves. Like we are engaging in practices that are meant to help support us in choosing to be grounded and regulated, because it is a choice. You don't have to choose to do that. And for some folks, some days it might not be an available choice. And so we want you to know that you always have a choice. If you're here with us live and something's coming up for you, you can always step away, right? You can always leave the room, get a glass of water, step outside, take care of yourself. We're not doing any activities that are designed to like provoke um, or bring up traumatic memories of the past, but we are talking about the phenomenon of trauma, and we never know what might bring up a memory. And we always want people to know that you always have the choice to take care of yourself. You can always come back to the recording later. If you do feel like you're engaging with something that feels like too much or it's going to make it hard for you to get through the rest of your day, please reach out to us so we can help provide some support. And our promises are unfinished business, because we will never get through everything we could get through in a day, especially with me and Carlos talking. um, And change only happens if you take action, right? We know there's lots of information about nervous system stuff out there, and this is not about knowledge. So we have tons of additional resources we'll share online in the Strategy and Solidarity 30-Day Nervous System Reset space. And this really is for us an embodied practice. And so most of what we're going to be focusing on are those simple daily embodied practices, because that change, the place where we're all looking to expand kind of our ability to navigate the challenges of the time with integrity and with intention, instead of from our, immediate reactions, which are not always our wisest reactions. It's a quote from Jessica Lanyadoo, who I love her podcast. Because our strongest reactions are not always our wisest reactions. Very often they're not. And so our hope is that by the end of these 30 days, we all have just expanded a little bit wider space of what we can navigate and tolerate as we make it through really challenging times. And especially when we'd rather not be here. It's certainly not the timeline I voted for. And yet it's the one we are stuck with at present. So how do we do what is ours to do in each day when there's such a cascading overwhelm of news stories and real life horrors that are trying to overwhelm us into inaction. Anything else on those promises or requests, Carlos?
Not that I can think of right now. I mean, in requests, I would just ask for those folks who are here with us live, if you really do, for real, if you need to do anything to take care of yourself, get up, go do it, right? Get your glass of water, use the restroom, whatever you need to get some eat, you know. Also to remember that all of this will continue to be available in the space. So if you miss 5 minutes or whatever because of a technology issue, no problem at all. Uh,
All right. Well, now that we've got all the requisite preamble out of the way, we're going to get into inviting you into some practices.
the amble.
So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is see if you can find an interesting object you can hold in your hands in the next 60 seconds or so.
Oh,
All right. And if you are on screen or willing to be on screen and share your interesting object with us. It's not planned ahead. I just grabbed this piece of pottery that my child made some number of years ago, sitting on their desk across the way.
can you describe it for anybody who may not be seeing it right now?
I could, but that's what we're all about to do in just a second.
Oh, sure, of course. Never mind. Why am I talking already? Look at me. See,
So let's
everybody
see.
loves a yap until they
What's your
start
interesting
yapping.
object, Carlos? You got an interesting object?
Yeah, I sure do. I'll yap. I do. I got this.
That's what
I
you
got
got.
this.
A squishy brain. Okay. Sarah, what do you got?
I've got this like little metal heart that's is also makes sounds.
Beautiful. Okay. So we're going to take our interesting objects. I'm going to set a timer for about 90 seconds. I want you to grab a pen and paper, or you can use a Word doc, whatever works best for your ability to process real quick. Voice app on your phone, whatever you need. You can go ahead and pause the recording if you're with us asynchronously until you can find your pen and paper. And I'm going to give you 90 seconds, and I want you to describe this interesting object in as many words as you can. And so you might think about the physical description, like weight, texture, temperature, and you might get into all of your senses. Does it have a smell? Most of us are not going to taste the object that we're holding in our hands, but a 2-year-old would, right? If you have a cup of coffee or something like that, that's your interesting object, you can take a taste. But you also might think about things beyond just the measurable of, its replacement value, its origin, what it means to you, if anything. Right? So take about 90 seconds and try to describe this object you have in your hands in as much detail and dimension as possible. All right, time starts now. All right, so that's about time. You can put your pencils down as if we were in a school test, which we're not, and just notice if that stresses you out. So remembering what it felt like to be in that classroom where they'd be like, okay, pencils down. Um, and we can take a minute and look at our list. When we're in large rooms, we often will ask people to count up how many adjectives they came up with to describe their interesting object. They're usually somewhere between like 12 and 32. Um, but since we have a smaller group today, I might just pick on you, Sarah, and ask if you'd be willing to read us your list describing your metal noise making beautiful little object.
Yeah, sure. I wrote this heart has chimes inside of it,
Hmm.
is painted yellow and has uh, light blue, dark blue, and an orange mandala painted on it. The yellow paint is chipped from being carried around and it has a good weight. And that's as far as I got.
Lovely, thank you.
Mhm,
I think a couple times we had people write poems to describe their objects, and we've learned lots of interesting things about
mm,
these little, tchotchkes or things that people might have on their desks, but actually so many of them carry so much value for people.
mhm.
And it's a really interesting way to learn a little bit more about the folks who are in the room with us. So thank you for sharing. It's also a way to think about how much dimension there can be to even really simple objects that we assign labels, right? It's a sculpture or a heart, but there's really so much more happening. And that ability to assign labels is super helpful if you're like driving a car down the street, right? If you were like taking in all the dimensions of the car next to you, that's a red car and the driver has black hair and it's the sunlight is reflecting, you crash into another car as you're describing in so much detail the car next to you. Just need to know car there, car here, maintain my velocity, brake when it's time to brake. So the ability that our human brains have to like quickly label and categorize things can be so helpful in so many circumstances, but it also can be very problematic when we start assigning simple labels and forget how much dimension can be underneath the things that we're observing. And the same goes for our own experience of the moment. I think I wrote in one of the emails we sent out to the community the other day that how are you is like a loaded question these days because things have been so challenging. But it's also just so rote, right? How are you? Oh, I'm good. How are you? Fine. Okay. We just give these simple answers and it really, hides how much is really happening in our own internal worlds. And so the next thing we're going to invite you to do, this first exercise kind of helped us get into this mode of observe and describe. We're going to ask you to take that same attention of observing and describing from your interesting object into yourself. Right? So I'm going to give you another about 60 seconds or so and just invite you to, you might continue with your pen and paper if you like, but you might also just do like a body scan and just notice what physical sensations are you experiencing in this moment. And again, if it's something that's like, oh, that's a little bit uncomfortable, it's outside of my comfort zone, that's an opportunity to step into it and see if you're willing to make a choice to try to expand your comfort zone and go along with the exercise. If it's something that feels overwhelming and like it is not safe for me to put this much attention here, then please opt out of it. That choice is always yours. And so you can, you know, um, take a minute to just notice, and maybe we'll work through a little bit of a body scan. So you might just start with your toes and notice how your toes are feeling in this moment. Maybe temperature. Are they warm or cool or neutral? They feel relaxed or tense, comfortable or uncomfortable. It feels good to wiggle them and stretch them around. I invite you to do that. Might see if you can come up with a descriptive word. Otherwise, you might just say, do my toes feel pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral right now? Mine always feel a little bit crackly, especially when I take a minute to actually check in with them. And from there, we'll move our attention up to the ankles. And again, if it feels good, I invite you to do some ankle rolls. And just notice maybe if you feel that stretch, if it's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And if you find anything that feels unpleasant, certainly don't continue with that movement and start to shift your attention somewhere else. So you move up through the calves. Again, inviting you in any way that feels good to move or stretch the back of your legs and just notice if there's a sensation, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, you might name for yourself. Moving up into the knees. Just noticing any sensation, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. You taking a minute to move your attention into your thighs. And if you're sitting, just feeling the pressure of connection between your legs and the chair that are, surface that you're sitting on. And just notice if that's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. While you're there, you might see if there's any way you could shift or move or stretch that might just help you feel 13% more comfortable in this moment, 5% more comfortable. Any small adjustment that just might help things be a little bit more comfortable for you in this moment. Moving up into the hips. And again, stretching or moving in any way that feels good. You might just notice, is there tightness, tension? You're feeling relaxed. Is there ease? Warm, cool, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral? Moving up into the stomach. You might notice if you just ate lunch and are feeling satiated and satisfied, or if you haven't eaten lunch yet and stomach's starting to get a little rumbly and hungry, just notice any sensation in your stomach that you can name for yourself. Moving up into the chest, I invite you to take a couple deep breaths. And the secret the yoga teachers have taught me is that you really want to focus on your exhale. See just how much old stagnant air you can exhale from your lungs so that you can take a full deep breath. And as you fill your lungs filling with air, let's consider, is that a pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feeling? Any other name you might place on the sensation as you take one more deep breath into the chest? Moving our attention into the shoulders. You might notice if your shoulders feel tense or relaxed. Are they up high? Can you drop them down? Maybe do a couple shoulder rolls if it feels good. And just notice how you might describe any sensation you feel in your shoulders. Tight, tense, relaxed, loose. There's no judgment, no evaluation, no should be or shouldn't be, just observing and noticing what is in this moment. As we move into your arms, again, invite you to stretch any way that feels good. If you, like me, are struggling with carpal tunnel, you might try some wrist twists. Is one of my favorite desktop yoga moves. It's easy to do at your desk. Is to just hold your hands kind of in a prayer pose, kind of at the center, and then gently push to one side, keeping your wrists at a 90-degree angle to your forearms. You should start to feel a real good kind of gentle burning stretch in the forearm there, and then gently to the other side as well. Noticing any sensation that's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral as we move up into the neck. And again, if it feels good, I invite you to do some neck rolls. Mine always sounds like a bowl of Rice Krispies. You might just notice. Again, does it feel tight or tense, relaxed or loose, stiff or sore? No judgment, just noticing. And just name for yourself that's a pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral sensation. As we move up into the face and all those, as I think I remember correctly, more muscles in the face and in the whole rest of the body combined, and just take a minute to notice. Is there anywhere in your face where you're carrying tension? Might even feel even just the tip of your nose and notice if there's a pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral sensation on the tip of your nose in this moment. If you like to, as you take another breath, you might see if there's anywhere in your face where you're able to relax or release if you're carrying any tension there. Nothing to force, just to notice. Now, finally, taking our attention all the way up to the top of our heads. Just noticing any sensation you can sense on the top of your head. Might be temperature if the room is warm or cool, might be the pressure of a hat or the feeling of your hair on your head. And just notice if the top of your head feels pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral in this moment. Anyway, along the way, if there's anything you'd like to share or that you notice, you're welcome to let us know or drop it in the chat. And we're going to continue on to taking a minute to notice our emotional experience in this moment. So again, it might be helpful to grab your pen and paper. Or you can sit there and reflect and just notice what emotions you're experiencing in this moment right now. And for some of us, it can be really hard to name our emotions. So there is a list of emotions on the screen. It might be small to read. If you can zoom in, you might try that. Otherwise, we'll post them online in the app afterwards. You might just notice you might be feeling confused about this exercise. You might be feeling peaceful after this exercise. You might be feeling depressed or overwhelmed given the state of the world. You might feel happy and connected being in this room with us right now. Again, those are not suggestions or expectations. Just thinking about the emotions we can experience, and we can experience more than one at any given time. We can have emotional responses to being here in this room. We can have emotional responses to the things happening in the world and all the things waiting for us after we get off this call. So just take the next 30 seconds or so and see if you can just name one or two emotions for yourself. I'll read a few of them off this chart. I used to have to walk around with like a list and read through them to try to figure out what I was feeling because I was that disconnected from my emotions. Angry, insecure, cautious, appreciative, chill, confused, withdrawn, content, love struck, disappointed, unmotivated, exhausted, grieving, anxious, celebrated, hurt, impatient, irritated, overwhelmed, depressed, unbothered, optimistic, frustrated, relaxed, guilty, negative, sad, happy, lonely, envious, and lots more on there. And then finally, as we're working through kind of our different dimensions of experience of this moment, we're going to go up to the brain. It's often the one dominating the conversation in the body, but we've made them wait till last for this part to say, what are you thinking in this moment? So again, for this one, I really do invite you to take the next 60 seconds and grab your pen and paper, and a pen and paper. If you can find a pen and paper, try that. Take the next 60 seconds to write down all of the thoughts going through your mind right now. All right. I invite you as you wrap up that list of all the things on your to-do list or critiques of this exercise or whatever else might be going through your mind, if you're willing and able to just fold that paper in half, put in your pocket, and know that those thoughts will be here to catch up with later on after we're done with this session. We've only got about 15 more minutes to go today. And this process of really separating out and being intentional in observing our physical sensations, our emotions, and our thoughts is not about dissecting our experience or compartmentalizing our experience. It's actually an invitation to stop doing that for many of us, which is to really give time and space for all of our body's wisdom centers. And there's so much really fascinating science and neurobiology out there really breaking down the polyvagal system and the way that we do actually literally process information through our guts, through our hearts, and through our brains. But in this head-dominated pretend logic culture that we live in, we tend to let the head dominate and really repress the other ways of knowing from the body and from the heart. And so this is one of our core practices we'll come back to throughout our time together over the next 30 days, which is to really just take a minute to really observe and notice our physical sensations, our emotions, and our thoughts. Oftentimes, especially when we have really strong reactions, they can be all jumbled up together. And this is just a way to start tracking and noticing what is happening for me in this moment, which we'll talk a little bit more about in just a second. Any questions before we keep moving? All right. So I'm going to invite you now to think about something that brings you joy or comfort. And this may be something real that you have access to in life. It could be an animal companion by your side right now. It could be a snack in the refrigerator. It could be a best friend or a loved one you can call after the session is over. It can also be someone or something that is no longer accessible to you, a loved one who's passed. I often think about my grandmother's chocolate chip cookies, and my grandmother's passed, but I can still remember the feeling of walking through her door and giving her a hug on my way to the cookie jar because she always had an endless supply of homemade chocolate chip cookies in that cookie jar. And I actually have that cookie jar in my kitchen now. And so it's a lovely memory. So just thinking about someone, something, again, it can be an imagined thing if you're like, I don't know, I never had that person. You can imagine what it would feel like to have that person who was there to always support you. I often imagine a sunny day on the Oregon coast, which has happened in real life, but is a small miracle in and of itself. Right. So think about something that brings you joy or comfort. I'm going to invite you to really practice tapping into all of your senses as you think about this person, place, thing, comfort food, any person, place, thing that brings you joy, comfort, or solace. And so really imagine what they look like. So if I'm imagining standing on a sunny day on the Oregon coast, I'm looking out at the ocean. All right. So imagine what this person, place, or thing looks like. Really try to see if you can see them here in front of you. Try to tap into what they sound like. For me, that might be the sounds of the ocean waves. What's the sound of this person's voice? Sound of the place or an object you're thinking of. Think about any smells or tastes as applicable. Again, that might be the smell of that salty ocean air, might be the taste of my grandma's cookies. What are the smells or tastes that might be associated with this person, place, or thing that brings you joy, solace, or comfort when times are hard? I'll try to tap into any physical sensations. Again, in my ocean example, that might be feeling the sand between my toes on the beach. Might be the feeling of my grandmother's arms wrapping around me. What are the physical sensations that you can tap into? And how about emotions? What emotions arise for you as you really try to feel yourself in the presence of this person, place, or thing that brings you joy or comfort? I think for me, in both settings, I just feel a sense of okayness, of a moment of everything being right in the world. It may be something completely different for you. So I invite you, if you like, to take a moment and just send a little gift of love from your heart to this person, place, or thing that brings you joy or comfort in hard times. And I invite you to take a minute now to do another quick body scan. We won't walk through the whole thing, but just notice, has anything shifted in your physical experience of this moment? Maybe it has, maybe it hasn't. It's not judgment. There's no right or wrong. It's just an opportunity to notice. Oftentimes we'll notice that maybe shoulders have dropped. Maybe we're breathing a little more easily. Maybe we're smiling a little bit, thinking about this person, place, or thing. If anyone has a reflection you'd like to share, you're welcome to do so here live or in the chat if you're watching the recording. And from that place of groundedness, I got head on my sides, but that's where we're going. I want you to now imagine that you're out taking a walk on a beautiful day on which snow has just fallen, wherever you may be in the world, or in a place where snow is appropriate. And you turn the corner, and this is what you see. And that is a large, full-grown Bengal tiger, I believe, walking through the snow. And so, imagining we don't live in a place where this is a common sight we'd expect to see, how might you react? And also notice if you've experienced any change in your physical sensations of this moment, just imagining the scenario with this picture on the screen. I know even me, like I feel my stomach tighten a little bit, even though I knew what was coming and I've done this exercise many times, but I can just imagine that, feel my stomach kind of clench a little bit. Did you imagine spitting all the cookies out of your mouth?
I started choking on them. I didn't like it. I was like, wait, what is that? I
so
really did. I mean, that's what the shocked face on my shocked look on my face was, that nobody else really would have seen, because you don't see what's happening unless we're speaking. But as the slides accidentally hit the tiger, it actually did the thing to me that it never does anymore, because I'm so used to going through this piece that even in my imagination, where I had a mouthful of your grandmother's cookies, because I wasn't really being that evocative on my own, I choked on them
I'm
and
so
got a
sorry.
chocolate
I'm
chip
glad that you
cookies stuck in my throat.
survived.
Went- and it smelled like
Sorry.
tiger, and it smelled
Oh
like
no.
tiger, which was
Okay.
very
Very
upsetting.
confusing. So what would we do if we saw, what would you do if you saw this tiger? If you're walking down the street, what do you think you would do?
My first response is probably to freeze and just stop what I'm doing. And then I would probably run. And
Yeah.
yeah.
I would say about 90% of people, because we often ask this question with very large groups of people in the room, say something along those lines of either the flight or the freeze. The freeze, especially because it's not something we expect to see in our environment. So I don't have like I don't have practice or scenarios of which to follow if I see a tiger, because it's not a threat I'm used to running into in my environment. So most people are gonna probably freeze and be like, am I actually seeing what I think I'm seeing? And many people believe they would run or slowly back away, or some variation on those themes. On occasion, we'll get people who say they want to pet the kitty.
I'll throw my cookies at it and hope it don't eat me. But
If
I think
there's
I'm gonna be Leonardo DiCaprio in this piece if we're in the snow. I don't think it's gonna be good for me.
if there's more than 10 people in the room, there's almost always one person who says they're going to pet the kitty. And I do believe they're serious. I do believe they're serious when they say that. And
Well, I believe they're
on
going to be
occasion,
Leonardo DiCaprio for sure. Then
less frequently, there's someone who says they're going to go get their gun out of the car, or they're going to take like a more aggressive approach, which pretty much wraps up our basic understanding of these survival responses of fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Fawn being one that's more commonly known these days, but was not super common and up until maybe a decade or so ago. And it's interesting why. The reason, I'll tell you, I don't have time to ask and do the thing I usually do, but is because most of our psychology really only tells us about the psychology of like middle class college male sophomores, because they're the ones who participate in these psychology experiments on college campuses. And so fawning, which is a caretaking response towards an aggressor as an attempt to save your life, tends to be a more gendered response. Anyone of any gender can use fawning as a survival response, and it tends to more often be used by women and female animals to try to caretake an aggressor as a protective measure. And because that is a survival response, it's also one that's often been weaponized and used in victim blaming. Like, why didn't they fight harder? Because like you're physically going into a state of trying to save your life by calming this person down and tending to their needs. And so survival responses are our body's way to save its life. You might be familiar with this hand model of the brain. It's a simple way to try to understand how our brain works. In this model, this part where my knuckles are would be the prefrontal cortex. That is kind of everything that makes us feel like we are a logical, rational, capable adult. So future planning, empathy for other people, strategy, all of that kind of lives in the prefrontal cortex. Now down here is our brainstem that's responsible for our survival responses. So the things that are involuntary, like breathing, arousal, heart rate, things that we cannot consciously control. And here, like our thumb, if my thumb's inside my knuckles here, is the amygdala. And the amygdala is like the alarm and the warning system. So when the amygdala senses a threat, it turns off the frontal cortex. So that part of your brain's no longer accessible to you. It's off. It's gone, like the fuse on your house, because my AC's been running, so we keep blowing fuses in the house the last couple of days when it's been so hot. So basically, like the fuse gets blown, that is offline. All of the energy gets sent to your survival mechanisms to save your life. So that if you were to come face to face with a large Bengal tiger, you may do something completely radically different from what you think you would do, because that part of your brain that thinks is not in control. The part of your brain that's going to react to save your life is the part that's in control. And so we cannot control whether or not that prefrontal cortex flips. Once the amygdala gets set off, it's gone. We no longer have that rational ability to self-reflect and think about what we're doing. We are making instinctual reactions. And in a true life or death situation, this can absolutely save your life. Absolutely save your life. The problem is that we have been conditioned with so much chronic stress that is not actually threatening our lives that we start to feel like our boss, our coworker, our family members, the news, our tigers, and like that there are life or death threats coming for us in every moment, when most of the time for most of us here in this room, that is not true. If you're living in a war zone, if you're trying to survive a natural disaster or an attack by a tiger, these things will save your life. When you're just trying to get through a meeting at work or get yourself out of bed to go to work in the morning, they are much less helpful. And so a couple of things about those survival responses that are important to know is that they are automatic responses that occur during times when we perceive a threat, whether or not that perceived threat is objectively a real threat. We respond instinctually to survive. If the environment is threatening or perceived to be threatening, we can live in a constant state of distress, right? Where we don't ever get to come back to feeling like we're okay. And this can reset the nervous system so that even small reminders can release an automatic survival response. So here's a little small reminder of that big tiger. So if you had, and I use this example because I think it's unlikely that anyone that I'm coming into contact has had a real life or death experience with a tiger, even a small reminder could make us feel like we're under threat again. But for most of us seeing this little baby tiger, what would you do if you came across this baby tiger in real life?
Put on a white suit and slide down next to it on one elbow and recreate the Thriller album.
Sarah?
Yeah, I definitely feel more like, oh, I would like to pet it, but I also would be worried that its parent is still around. So probably still pretty cautious.
Mm-hmm. And that's where most people, we get a pretty even split on that one between the ones who are like, I'm definitely petting that tiger, and the people are like, where is the mother? I'm still cautious and afraid, right? But for many of us looking at the picture, it generates that like kind of like you want to squeeze the little cute babies, right? It presents more of that maternal caretaking response that is a genuine desire to take care of something. And just to make the distinction that that's very different than fawning, which is not the genuine desire to caretake, it's caretaking for an aggressor in order to protect myself. and that how those are different, though they can be confused. The actions might look the same, but they are in fact really different experiences. One is a genuine desire to caretake for something that needs my help possibly. And the other one is caretaking as a way to try to protect myself or protect the kids or protect whoever else is around. The folks of the community resiliency model use the term tend and befriend instead of fawning, which I think is more descriptive. You're tending and befriending until you can go get help and get yourself safe and away. But it doesn't start with an F, so it's not winning the battle. Fawning is winning because it also starts with an F. It goes along with that. So I know we're about at time. We went a little bit long in our introduction. So we're going to keep going since we're recording, and know that the folks in the room with us, if you have to step away, please feel free, but we'll probably do another 15 minutes or so to get through the rest of our introduction for today. And you can always come catch the recording if you need to step away. So this is a slide here from the community resiliency model. Carlos and I do have permission to use their content. We went through their facilitator training a couple years ago and have found their model really useful in just its simplicity and ease of being able to teach it to other people. And they work with folks often in war zones and after natural disasters where there are a lot of people dealing with severe PTSD with minimal access to mental health resources. Like not everybody's going to be able to get to therapy, you know, for a while when everyone's kind of recovering. And so simple skills that community can use to help each other. So as we go through these, you all are welcome to share these skills with others. You're not welcome to like teach your own classes on it, but you are welcome and invited to share all these resources with other folks. And we have links to more of their stuff in the app. So their understanding is that we have what they call the resilience zone. I think it's similar to models of like the zone of tolerance or other things that work. Some people are activated by the word resilient because it's been weaponized against oppressed people. Like, oh, you just need to be more resilient to our oppression. And so that even that word alone can be like activating and irritating to some folks. So it might just be the okay zone. You can call it whatever you want to call it. But for our purposes, we're going to stick with the original sense of the word, which is resilient, that ability to like bend like a tree in a storm and bounce back and still be whole. And so these dotted blue lines represent kind of the boundaries of the resilient zone. And the yellow line represents how we are navigating. And so the resilient zone is not a Zen zone. It's not, I love my life and everything's fabulous zone. It might be, but it might also be things are really hard. What it is that my frontal lobe is still online. I have not flipped my lid. I still have access to all of my resources and capacities to manage all the highs and lows that life has to throw at me. So I can feel happy, I can feel enraged, I can feel sad, I can feel okay, but I still am like fully functioning with all my skills, tools, and capacities available so that I can make intentional choices in the face of the challenges ahead of me. And so it's, roll with the punches and keep it moving, right? Which is different than actually getting knocked out of that zone. And so this red little lightning bolt represents either a stressful or traumatic event, like the tiger attack, or a stressful or traumatic reminder, like the baby tiger, of something that's happened in the past. I'm not making light of tiger attacks. It's just hopefully not a real life trauma someone's experienced in this room, at least. And so when we experience that stress or a reminder, our body can respond in the exact same way. And that is that we can get knocked out of that resilient zone. That's where the frontal lobe is gone offline, and we are moving into those instinctual responses. And there's lots of information about the neuroscience of the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. For me, it's easier to remember high and low and not, know all of the definitions, but there's lots of science out there if you're interested in those. Some of you might know more than me, but for us, we're just going to stick with the high zone and the low zone. So when we're in the high zone, we might feel edgy, irritable, manic, might go into anxiety and panic and angry outbursts. We might feel physical pain, even though a physical thing isn't happening. Like those places where if you've ever had a panic attack and it feels like you can't breathe or your heart's jumping out of your chest, it can really provoke physical sensations. Or we can go into the low zone. And in the low zone, it might be more numbness, depression, sadness, feeling isolated, exhausted, fatigue. It's often easier to notice when we're in the high zone because we feel like we're acting out in an exaggerated way or acting out of character. We're lashing out or saying or doing things we might regret later. Whereas it's harder sometimes to notice when we're in the low zone because we are just so shut down and numb and isolating and don't have external stimulus or external feedback from other people to react to. And if the stressful or traumatic events are consistent or frequent enough, we can get stuck in the high zone where our nervous system, we don't really have a resilient zone anymore. And we're kind of responding to everything all the time as a threat. If you think about it, maybe you've had moments in life when you felt that way, or maybe you have someone in your life who's just perpetually unhappy and looks for every opportunity to point out what's wrong. Oftentimes, these are folks who are stuck in the high zone. Or we know folks who may be stuck in the, probably don't see them very often, but folks who are stuck in the low zone and just really struggle with showing up and engaging. And so the important thing here is that this is not a moral failing. This is our body neurologically responding in the ways it was designed to survive, in ways that are not always adaptive to current circumstances, but are absolutely not conscious choices, but a response of our physiology interacting with the world around us.
So one of the things that is important is to be able to adapt the ideas that we are talking about to your own language, right? I grew up as a Marvel zombie. For other Marvel zombies and geeks, you know what that means. For folks who are not, don't worry about it. You just pick characters or archetypes that make sense for you to understand the zones and ways that your behavior may be reflective of your understanding, right? Or help you understand more deeply. So, for instance, right now, I feel very comfortable in my resilient zone. It is not a problem for me today to understand what is happening around us, to have some understanding of the stakes, uh, and to be sat here with you all doing exactly this because whether or not anybody else in the world recognizes it, this is the work, right? This is the work. And I know that, right? I know that because I know the stakes are high enough that going to that high zone, which I personally call the raging Hulk zone, where the those scenes in the Avengers when Incredible Hulk still had no sense of anything and was just willing to smash whatever was in front of them as a rage factor and separated completely from any consciousness, right? Of Banner. The lid was flipped, as we were saying. That moment is one that I am so deeply in touch with. And I don't say used to because I have seen myself get there and within my adult lifetime, right? In order to protect my child and more than once. One time real, one time imagined. Both times, it wasn't really the called for behavior, yet I was there. I have worked since then to bring myself into this resilient zone again, because the other place I've been is that low zone, that stuck zone, which you'll find at the bottom. That is the lonely man. That is David Banner walking away from having become the Incredible Hulk, destroyed some town, and now needs to go find a new identity again. Shame, shame, shame. Right? That's the 1970s version. That is not David Banner is not it's that's not it. That's not it at all. But you know the difference only if you're a Marvel zombie again. It's unimportant. The Lonely Man theme that was played though at the end of the Incredible Hulk, that for me, as an adult, still is the sound that starts playing in my head when I know depression is very close to me, and we are good friends, right? The truth is that that is the other side of that kind of mania when that happens. Okay, this, this, this. This that sounded so eloquent right up until I did that. This is one of the tools that helps me find myself in a place where what I'm able to do is take the best of Dr. Banner, right? The best of the strength of the metamorphosized Hulk, and to bring those into a place where you've got the smart Hulk. And I'm able to make choices and use whatever strengths or perceived strengths the society gives me, right? As somebody who is two spirit, I have experienced a world wherein straight men will very often uh, be folks who are um, in the streets as they will be. They're allowed to be out. We know this, right? I am not one. This is not atypical, and I happen to be wearing a skirt right now. Going to get coffee in the neighborhood in which I live, I am prepared for the type of bullying that I received growing up, right? For it to be dangerous, for somehow the the end of Act One of Torch Song trilogy to be my end as I walk out the door to move the garbage or some such. Yes, never, never. What? No, never. My neighbors are beautiful. They say hello. We have conversations. They stop me in the street. We're chatting it up. That's never once in my life been the circumstance to be that extreme. Certainly, I have had, in youth experiences, but that is again, right? That's old stuff that I have had to rebuild my resiliency zone to be able to remember that that is old stuff and not find myself getting stuck right in the low zone where I'm not allowing myself to actually be myself, or in the high zone where I feel like I have to run out of here with mace in my hand or I can't walk the streets. Like neither one of those is the truth. And this is just one tool that can help us get through those small moments, right? And of course, we're going to go through many, 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 many more. But this is just one tool, one remembrance, along with, something that brings you a little comfort and joy.
And one more thing that I forgot to point out on the first slide is that we can just ping pong back and forth between those two without returning to center. So there might be places where, excuse me, you might have a tendency to go to one or the other more as your kind of default, but it also might be contextual. There are places, especially for people of color, it may not be safe to go into the high zone at work. So you might shut down, but you might go into the high zone at home, or vice versa. You might lash out at people at work and then get depressed when you get home. Not to make light of it, but to just recognize we can kind of ping pong back and forth between this high zone of activation, this low zone of shutdown, without returning to center. And we can also notice that, we'll talk more about this in other weeks, but that when other people are activated, sometimes it can knock us out of our zone as well. But the opposite is also true. When we're regulated and grounded, sometimes that can help regulate and ground people around us who are outside of their zone. And so we'll talk more about that as we go through the month. But for this week, we really want to invite you to just practice noticing where you are relative to your zone. Are you in your zone? Are you out of your zone? If you're out of your zone, you may not recognize it, but once you're back into your zone, that's the opportunity to be like, wow, I really got knocked out. What was it that knocked me out? And so we're not starting with what to fix right now. We're really starting with just assessing our baseline and noticing what are the things right now that knock us into the high zone? What are the things that knock us into the low zone? And what are the things that help us come back to center? And so we have those skills and tools to use. We practiced a couple of them today. The first one was the body scan, just kind of recognizing our experience of this moment can help us come back into our zone. Partly just because the act of observing and describing helps to reset the frontal lobe and turn it back on. And resetting ourselves with our sense of like, I am safe in this moment, right? A lot of times when we're knocked out of that zone, we feel like we are under threat of death, right? And so reminding ourselves that while many things in life are challenging, I, in this moment, sitting in front of my computer in my home, am physically safe. And just tapping into those sensations in the body is one way to turn the frontal lobe back on in the brain and reconnect with the present moment. The second one was the resourcing of actively choosing to connect and deeply with all of the senses with a person, place, or thing that brings us joy or comfort. Again, reminding ourselves that we do have resources to help us manage hard times and connecting in with them intentionally to feel that love and connection, even if we don't have access to them. Like if you do, go for it, pet the fur baby and call the person you love and smell the pretty thing, whatever you can have access to around you, resource yourself physically with what you can. And remember that even if you don't have physical access to them, you can still choose to resource in that moment and give yourself that sense of comfort and well-being by connecting in with those resources you have or can imagine. And so those are kind of primary skills and tools that we want to work on this week, which is tracking, just noticing my physical sensations, emotions, and thoughts in this moment, whether I'm in or out of or getting close to getting knocked out of my resilient zone, and then choosing to practice the body scan and the resourcing. And the more we practice them when we're not knocked out of our zone, the more available those skills and tools are to us in the moments when we most need them. If we've never practiced them, we absolutely will not remember to use them when our frontal lobe is offline because we can't. It's not there. But if we get into a habit and a practice of doing a body scan and noticing like, oh, I'm holding my breath. My heart is racing. I'm feeling pretty flushed in my cheeks. Those are actually the sensations that allow us to recognize when we've been knocked out of our zone because we don't have the capacity in our frontal lobe to be self-reflective in those moments, but we can notice like, this is an unusual physical, sensation I'm experiencing right now. I might need to take action to bring myself back to center. And so
Yeah.
that's the overall
All right,
approach.
go ahead.
Yeah, that we're going to be working on this week. Go ahead, Carlos.
I was just going to add that it's clear and we understand that the older that we get, very often can feel like the idea of practice is more difficult to embrace, right? Because like, well, I'm supposed to know things or whatever. I went to one class, I tried that a time. That is not practice. That is learning, right? And practice is the repetition of doing the thing, the repetition of doing it wrong. There's no wrong in this, right? There's no wrong here, but in doing it in a way that does not necessarily bring you exactly what you're after the first time out, and doing it and doing it and doing it until you really do have the skills and you start to integrate those. That takes a little bit more time. And so we are inviting you to really practice. And here's a tool that will help with that.
Okay, so we'll post those reflection questions in the discussion feed, and we'd love for folks who are willing to share their answers. It's always helpful to see what are the things that we already have access to that help us get back into that zone. A lot of times people say breathing, music, walking, going outside, talking to a best friend. All of those things can be helpful. And we all already have a skill set, and we're just hoping to build a little bit stronger toolbox through the next 30 days and provide some of that accountability to practice together. So we will have a prompt or a practice or a resource to share each day over the next 30 days. And we'll be back here live for our next live practice session next week. There won't be so much preamble. We're going to dive straight into the exercises next time. Happy to answer any questions if anyone has any. Otherwise, we'll let you get back to the rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Really enjoyed getting this time to focus on my nervous system.
I really appreciate you being here. All right. Well, take good care of yourselves out there and let us know how it goes. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Be well.